get an app out there without having, spend too much of diligence time, which requires for, scaling applications, etc. So that's where it came from. We're at it today, a critical juncture, because we are making not just computer usage operations as a no code app work, but things which an enterprise probably needs, which can be really custom dev, is also moving into that low code no code territory, and that is why it is more exciting than when Windows launched or Linux launched.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Sandeep, on a serious note, I still remember using the black screen like you mentioned. When we were in school, I don't know how many of you here remember Fortran, Lisp, these languages. At that time, they were considered, as one of the best, which GUI part of it, which is nothing but graphical user interface. And we were used to be very excited about it at that point. Now, from there, everything has evolved. Everything. I mean, the other day when I was speaking to somebody, they knew what a CD meant. Netflix, sending us movies in CDs versus now streaming of movies. So there's a huge change in technology, right? And that's a lot. Now, Sandeep, on that note, right, one of the things that people have been talking about low code, no code is because of the technophobia. Whether we like it or not, a lot of people still have phobia towards technology, using a mobile application or using a web application, even for the day-to-day needs about security. Could be general usage of what will happen next, and even to develop applications, right? There are two sides, the user side of it as well as the building side of it. Both of them, they're technophobia from a user point of view. I would say that they are paralyzed in terms of using a mobile application or a web application. Technophobia from a customer point of view is, how cost is customizing the right solution, or should I go for an already built solution, which is nothing but a low code, no code solution? So there are two aspects of it, right? Do you think low code, no code solutions are, the solution for people with technophobia, in both aspects?
Sure, I'll answer this there are three ways to the low code, no code, framework or phenomena that goes around. Okay, one is the low code, no code platform providers itself. So these are people who make sure you can build an app without having to code too much, right? So companies like, Zapier, or even closer home, like a Zoho Creator or something like that, right? So these are platform providers. Then there are enterprises. So enterprises could use a Zoho Creator to provide a service to a user. So enterprise is now a user of a low code, no code platform. Okay. And finally, you and I are users of a particular service from this particular enterprise who might be using the no code platform. So all three have to come around to make this a trustworthy and a successful user experience, for that matter. I think each one follows. Success helps an initiative like nothing else, right? And failure kills initiatives sometimes like nothing else too. Like, I remember ordering books from Flipkart on cash on delivery into a, right? Like, because that was the option for Indians at back in the day. I mean, Flipkart started because Amazon wanted credit cards for you and Indians wouldn't give it. So, but today, as much as it still exists, digital payments have turned it around. So, success things a little more easier, and stakeholders in that success is first platform providers like a Zoho Creator, a Zapier, a bunch of various low-code, no-code platform that exists within the market. Is success which is built on these platforms. If I can prove an Uber of Bangalore being built on Zoho Creator and launch that and find that success, that's an enterprise success. A user, using that Uber of Bangalore service, and successfully having a good experience booking a cab or booking a delivery or whatever is the success on the user side. So all three, when it comes together, kind of the matter of trust, matter of scalability, matter of even very good experience of having used that service. I think I was just, arguing over a coffee with a friend recently that I'm sure all of us have experienced this in Bangalore, probably where I am at, or anywhere in India, especially after pandemic, that Ubers and Olas haven't gotten back to the scale that they were at. We don't get cab frequently or as easily as we used to, etc., etc., etc. Right? Like, why can't we open source it? Why can't we open source a framework wherein drivers can sign up, users can sign up, payments happen between users and drivers, and there's nothing as a platform, right? So that's an open source community which could come together like that. So, and that could be very much possible with the low code, no code platform that exists. So, and that translating into reality is probably required. I mean, I think that's good transition from what we discussed earlier of how did we come here. Now, how do we go from here to later depends on how successful can we make. Can we as users get that experience? Can enterprises build use services on top of this low code, no code platforms? So I do believe that technophobia need not be about coding. Technophobia could be as much as you said about cash on delivery, which is not, whether you use a card or pay cash out of your wallet, neither of them are coding, right? But you are more tentative to or more secure about using cash from your wallet than using your credit card, or probably used to be. So it's not just about aversion to coding. It's just about adopt to new ways of doing things. And that requires success, that requires an inspiration, that requires an example for someone to set. And there are a bunch which are coming out, each one of us probably use it in our daily professional. Well, Zoho Creator was a good example of that. Even things like Slack and Zapiers of the world is a good example of how we get things done more easily today against what we used to had to depend on a developer or code it ourselves.
Yeah, thanks, Sandeep. That was a very interesting example that you put up. And I never thought about open source platform, competing against the Ubers of the world, right? Yeah, of course, it can be done, while at the same time, like you mentioned, users adapt to it. It's easy for them to adapt to it. The drivers who usually have a lot of technophobia, they adapt to it. And the platform is so seamless to take care of everything between the exchanges between the actual parties, and there is no third party there, and things are a lot easier. Yeah, absolutely, it's a different thought process. I think that can be extended into a lot of other areas and industries also. So, while you're talking about it, one of the things that you mentioned is also adaptability, right? And adaptability is also very closely related to culture. Like you said, we as Indians, we all used to at least have a lot more phobia towards paying before getting a plan. And I think we still do at some level, a lot of us still do. So that's why probably Flipkart came into existence, as you mentioned. And in speaking about especially e-commerce in India per se, What do you think, the low-code, no-code platforms could benefit? I'm talking about, there are a lot of people, non-tech people, a lot of brilliant ideas. I mean, the startups are booming in India.
Yep.
And people have brilliant ideas, right? And they necessarily are not coming from technical background, which was what it was about 5 to 10 years back. Somebody starting a startup, usually the trend has been that they're coming from the engineering background or data science background, or serious sales and marketing background. But now, the market is wide open for everybody, and people are being experimental. They're willing to take that risk. So how do you think the low code, no code platforms per se, or low code, no code concept per se, could be beneficial for these startups with new innovative ideas?
Sure. I think the pattern of yesterday to today, tomorrow reflects equally well even in the e-commerce industry. Back when Flipkart started, or if you remember, even like the e-commerce industry in India actually started in parallel with deal hunt industry. If you remember, all of us used to go online only because it used to be cheaper. And all of these deal hunt websites used to be out there for customer acquisition, and they had a marketing budget for it. So then we had basically monoliths where you could be part of, but you didn't have control over what happened, right? While over and Flipkart is a good example, because in Flipkart, when they started out, everything that was being sold was only by Flipkart. They had to buy books, and I remember this. I mean, I very parallel to Flipkart story, I used to run a similar world business, and we may have even spoken to the Bunsers for partnering opportunity back in the day, when Bunsers would actually pick up a call if you call Flipkart, number that was there on their website. Okay, so in those times when Flipkart was the only seller, to today where you and I could become an e-commerce seller without having to code our own website, right? Because Flipkart and Amazon have let us do that. We can be sellers. We could have our own shops, digital shops.
Yeah.
And that model is also replicated in the world of Shopify, big commerce, right? Like we have e-commerce platforms onto which you now can build a e-commerce website of your own, and literally in few clicks. Okay, everything from your inventory to your display to your pricing to your payment. I spent some time just before CData in Razorpay, and the whole concept there was also to make sure payment gateway is a one-click, shop solution. Just install and you're ready to go. I mean, you can do more things if you are savvy about it, but for just doing the basics, it was a minute's job, right? So that was a good example. And Shopify is next version of what Flipkart and Amazon did. Shopify saw that there need not be only giants of Flipkart and Amazon's brands themselves put something up. Now, that is what is still probably a story of a couple of years ago. Today, all of us have heard of the D2c revolution, right? Direct to consumers. And when you're direct D2C, need is not just for setting up an online shop, it is also for fulfillment, it is also for sourcing. So a Shopify and a big commerce didn't really help solve your sourcing problems, didn't really solve your fulfillment problems, didn't really solve your delivery problems, things like that, right? So today there are unicorns, the fastest unicorns in the country and in the world have been D2C enablers. Where if you are a small brand out of, like if you're even making a pickles and papads in to probably making big computers, by your own, you could become a D2C, player with the help of D2C enablers, which have every kind of service available on those platforms without having the tricks of trades for everything. So tricks of trades for building e-commerce is technology. Tricks of trade for building a fulfillment cycle is supply and logistics skills, right? So now we are not talking of technophobia or technical aversion just to coding. It's also about how to talk to that guy in an auto or a, in a Tata Ace or a scooter who will go and deliver your, goods to the end. So I think enablement is going to be a big factor in the e-commerce industry, where it started out from marketplace players like Flipkart and Amazon. Then every brand came into the fore. So today, take the Tata's launched the Tata New, right? Recently, they're all over IPL. They just bought the IPL rights so that they could launch a product out there. You've got the Aditya Birla Group with all their Peter England, Planet Fashion, etc. You've got the new age brands like Pumas, etc., having their own e-commerce platforms. That was still yesterday. Today is about the pickles and papad, the knitwear done by your wife or your mom, that can go onto it. So that doesn't mean you do your job well. If knitting is your job, do that very well. And there are platforms which will enable you to take that online, which will enable you to get the good across to a warehouse, which will enable you to get the good across from warehouse to the end consumer. That truly is going to be the success of low code, no code, not necessarily only about removing coding. It's about removing every skill but your core skill. If your core skill is knitting, viewing, baking, making pickles, you can focus only on that. Rest can be taken care of by these platforms. That's what I see in e-commerce happening, because let me tell you, e-commerce is not a software industry. E-commerce is buy and sell, which is the probably second oldest profession in the world. Everybody has been buying and selling and bartering for longest period of time. So given that, it's not so much a software company. Indeed, when we speak about low code, no code effect on software companies, that's a different kind of a scenario. E-commerce is probably going to reflect the reality of closer.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks for bringing up direct to customer. In that regard, right, of late, we have been talking to a few of our clients who are in, in this building platforms and direct to customer, especially during the COVID time. And one of the interesting things I've seen is this, where they're promoting specialization, like, one of the 70-year-old grandma are able to make pickles, that they specialize in, because they're not selling all kinds of pickles. It's just what they enjoy and what they specialize in, and at their own convenience. And, say if the stock is available, they put it on the platform and it's just one click away. Say his stock is and bottles are available, and somebody comes, picks it up and does the thing for them. Or, when they're off the business, they just say not available at this point. So that was one of the things. And I've heard another interesting, just recently is, the street vendors, right? They, during the COVID times, they have helped a lot of us survive. They necessarily, for probably their own bread and butter, and also because we needed it, they did go beyond, above and beyond, and I think they were supplying it. So I think that was one of the ideas recently where I saw that, where you can directly contact one of the street vendors and say, hey, this is what I need, and then they figure out how to get it delivered to your place. So there are a lot of interesting ideas popping up in that space. And I think, this low code, no code platform is going to enable and revolutionize how businesses are done. Earlier it was the giants who were holding the e-commerce per se, but I think now, through these local no code platforms, we are enabling even, people like street vendors reach out to their own target audience.
Actually, I'll extend that a little further. Indeed, why probably, that's necessary. Like, for example, the person who's making that pickle, or the street vendor of fruits and vegetables, right? He could very easily list on Amazon too today. But why probably it's still important for him to own a channel of their own, whether it's a pickle maker, papad maker, computer maker, or a software maker, right? So is because you then own the consumer. If you're on Amazon, you do not own consumer. Don't just because your sales might go off the roof, from against selling on your own channels where, the traction may not be as much as the biggies might provide. You don't own it. You don't know if Amazon is trying to sell to the customer a different pickle next time around, right? So, yeah, and you don't own the experience. You don't own the experience of how that is packaged. If you order from Amazon, you get it in brown bag, right? Like you get it in brown bag and black tape. You cannot, get away from it. But if you want an experience of a pickle opening, to be cherished, then you can provide that on your own channel. And that is, I think, in each of these efforts, those are the important data points on which you can really make a difference. Are you just trying to sell the pickle? Are you trying to sell the pickle experience? Are you providing, recipe of pickle on your packaging, right? What Amazon will do is Amazon will give you an India story, like Amazon India story, which may not be you, which may be a seller like yourself somewhere else, but it's still not owned by you. I think that ownership is what is going with low code, no code. You own it. I think there's also another myth similar to the myth of citizen developer, right? So the myth of, it creates like a shadow IT. I have to maintain this. I have to, like, it is only for build, I deploy it, etc. I think all of these are being taken away, and that's probably going to be part of that success story that I'm speaking of, where if you can enable a pickle maker to do things on your own with no shadow IT, to hire an IT admin without having to, go through hoops of on deployment and server costs and things like that, that will determine the success of that user. That will determine the success of that pickle buyer who will buy from that person. And that will in turn, elongate the journey or success of the low code, no code platforms in themselves.
Yeah, Sandeep, you bring up a very interesting point. This has been in debate for a while now, especially off late in the design industry. It's not, I mean, design, right? UX, UI design per se, it's not just about simplifying workflows or simplifying, the turnaround times or reducing the turnaround times or simplifying the way you work on a task. It is beyond that. It is about creating experiences and, how do you achieve it? This is one of, one of the points that has been always in debate about by the experts out there. So, and truly, like you mentioned, it is not just about selling a product, it is about creating experiences along with your product and the service that you're providing. So, yeah, giants don't let you are under the shadow of a giant if you are on Amazon, but if you are on one of these low code, no code platforms which enable D2C, then I guess you are able to be yourself, position your brand or yourself, create experiences. So I guess there is a lot more. It is not just about sales like you mentioned, but I completely agreed with that. Sunny, while we are on the same topic, we talked about the B2C, especially the e-commerce part. How do you see the low code, no code, impacting this deep tech and high tech platforms? Do you see, a lot of possibilities there, or do you think it is still debatable? I mean, there's those platforms algorithms lying deep down. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, so high tech, deep tech, and general technology adoption, right? Like software companies. From that perspective, I think I'll add what probably lies in future. I think today's LCNC, what they're almost abbreviated to as, could also become LCNCFC. Okay, is low code, no code, also full code if you need to. Okay, you could go full stack if you really, really want to. So it's not about you avoiding coding in your development cycle. It's actually about involving coding where it is necessary, where it is really custom, right? Like there's a myth again, as I was saying, that low code, no code is only for build phase. I do, think that low code, no code is being used for MVPs, experimentation, and that is probably going to remain the case in an 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of your cases are probably going to be experimentation. Fair, right? But I think going from 80 to 20, and the objective of these low code, no code platforms would be to convert that last 10%, which is 70 to 80% of the people, over to the next, 20%. So, and that requires full stack abilities. And that requires custom dev, that requires ability to move away from one platform to another, like not get locked in. I think one of the fears people also have with low code, no code, I could build e-commerce on Shopify, but if tomorrow Shopify, tries to up my pricing, I cannot move that so easily to BigCommerce. So, interoperability between platforms, interoperability between infrastructure. If I am on AWS today and I need to move to Azure, interoperability between skill sets of people, which means, I built this application almost with drag and drop, but tomorrow if I need to adopt AI ML in my data orchestration, I'm able to do that. If I need to connect my e-commerce with my ERP, if I need to connect my e-commerce with my loyalty systems, so data connectivity between multiple applications, I think that is where what is critical for high tech, deep tech, and software industry to ride on the success of LCNC. So I think there's interesting studies done there. Like, each software company does this. I mean, even the biggest of the people have adopted, low code, no code platforms for experimentation. There's the terminology of intrapreneurs nowadays, right? Apart from entrepreneurs, where you kind of have a team within your small setup who are always on an R&D, always are looking out for a new product to come out, and help suit customers' needs. That adoption has started, but I think the bridge of interconnectivity between the enterprise world is a complex one. It's not a simple one, to be very honest, because don't depend on one stack of application. Let me tell you, like even the biggest of the software world companies, like an Adobe, like a Salesforce, etc., which will have anything and everything a marketing team or a sales team would need, from CRMs to ERPs to CDPs to DMPs. Take any abbreviation, combine 2-3 letters, they'll have a software for it, right? That's how Salesforce and Adobe world kind of works. Interoperability between Salesforce and Adobe is equally painful, let me tell you. I mean, we are in that world in CData. If you have bought a Salesforce CRM and you want to buy a Adobe DMP or a data marketing platform, connectivity between these two are really, really difficult to achieve. They make it difficult because they have a cross product to sell, right? So I think the success for software industry is going to be basis the bridge that we can build on that. We are betting big, to be very honest, in what you refer to as well in design, right? Like I actually put design to be the middle D of the 3Ds. I put data, design, and decisioning. Okay, so and low code, no code framework and go to market framework actually depends on these three parts, which is you've got to, I mean, even if we put the fulcrum on the center D, which is design, you've got to design basis a data which is available, but your decisioning based on data, what design throws at you, right? So that's why you do the panel studies. That's why you do the alpha, beta, before full-blown release. And that data design and decisioning cycle requires more improvement for a software, high tech, deep tech world than it could be for a consumer world like Ubers and Flipkarts, or I think a good another example is OSMs. I don't know how many of you know of OpenStreet versus Google Maps, right? So enterprises actually adopt more OpenStreetMaps. There's a famous and very popular and successful company in India called MapMy India, which has been on OpenStreetMaps forever. So I think these are easier adoption platforms when it comes to consumers. When it comes to high-tech, deep-tech software, enterprise world, I think the connectivity bridge, interoperability is a missing link today. But I do see, coming about in that same 80-20 ratio rather than being 100%.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I guess on a lighter note, right? I guess a lot of us have jobs because they're so complex, right? Transitioning between Azure and AWS is a nightmare. And I guess some of us thrive on, transitioning those platforms if at all there is a need, and there are, a lot of job opportunities there. One of the key concerns over a period of time, one of the key concerns a lot of designers as well as the developers had is with the, with the evolution of low code, no code platform, jobs are at risk. And that's a classic question I have been asked a lot of times, and I pose the same question to you. What kind of jobs do you see are at risk with the evolution of code platforms?
I think that question is not from days, weeks, months, or even years. I think it's decades and centuries old question. From coal mines to textile mills to manufacturing units to everything has raised that question, right? So I think all of that, the answer to that lies. And if AWS came along for service, it's not like all the IT admins lost their job. You got more of server admins, more of AWS admins today than they were ever in the mainframe world, right? Like when we had huge ass mainframe machines, and it required 10 admins to maintain just one 32 MB machine. There are more system admins to maintain one cluster of AWS today. Although the job in itself is easy, the scale that we are going into is humongous, and that is not going to stop, right? So I do developers are at a risk in any way. I think it's just going to open up to do more, accelerate things a lot easier, bring down the cost of experimentation in a big way. I mean, the reason why interoperability is become difficult is it's a competitive world, and nobody wants to invest in interoperability between yourself and your competitor, right? So while if it's a third party, maybe there is value to it. That is where LCHC really fits in. It lets the enterprises and platforms in itself kind of fulfill their objectives, but not considering the users of LCNC platform, right? Like today, at the end of the day, it's not salespeople who will go and build don't assume that low-code, no-code applications are for salespeople who want to sell something. They went to their product manager shot their idea down, so he will go and build something in this platform and go still sell to consumer. That's not how it's going to work, right? So it is just that the product manager, before even providing the specs to an engineer, can actually build and demo an app within days time. He can take this to the salesperson can take this to a consumer, make sure that the spec sheet is more clearer. Engineering manager can accelerate this more scaled world much more quickly. And it need not be, again, probably what might help is if low code no code platform can provide that interoperability where I am taking it out of say Zoom and hosting it in Freshdesk, or hosting it in in AWS or Azure of my own. That is a missing bridge, but it is still going to accelerate your work. I think product managers are going to look better, engineering managers are going to look better. Us working with that engineer manager are going to be less stressed about no clear specs being provided to them. They're going to be less stressed about everything having to work agile way, where customers wake up the next day and have coffee instead of chai, and thus the feature X will have to become feature Y. So I think it's a boon, not a curse. I think only people who will be are people who cannot adopt, and that is not a curse of any platform. That's just the curse of it's probably people cursing themselves rather than anything else. And that's been the case, age old, it's of coal mines, textile mills that we have seen is a good example. So I think we can steer very, very, very clear of the fact that developers are not at risk. Developers will always be in demand. Indeed, what I mentioned, LC, NC, FC, that FC part cannot be possible without very, very, very skilled engineers on board, even your already built, already MVP'd LCNC application.
Absolutely, Sandeep. I mean, you were on the point and on the target when it came to that. Yeah, one thing is that yes, we definitely have to upskill ourselves. There are certain things that are being replaced right now, like for example, a lot of websites can be automated. So the requirement for HTML experts or experts is the need for it is coming down, but we should be able to adapt to other technologies, and there are so many frameworks, so many technologies are popping up day in and day out, and if we keep up with that, I think there is I don't see why any of these platforms will be a threat to us. In fact, like you mentioned, they are creating more and more jobs rather than taking away our jobs. So it's more about our mindset and how we evolve with these platforms, I guess. So it is, we have about another 10 minutes. If you guys have, the attendees, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to, post them on the chat, and I would love to take some of them.
Yes, Fatima, there is one question, and it's, I guess, directed towards you. It says, what do we need to keep in mind while designing for low-code platforms to reduce technical debt?
What do we keep in mind to design low-code platforms to reduce? Sorry,
technical debt.
Technical debt. Okay. So for any design, we understand why the stakeholder is building this platform. What is the vision for this platform? To be more precise, we need to understand what is the goal and where they are heading with this platform, along with understand who their target audience are, our target market is. If we understand the problem statement well, if we understand the vision well, and the target market well, I think empathizing with the stakeholder gets very easy. Now, once you understand the target market and target end users, understanding their psychometrics is extremely important. Earlier we were talking about D2C platforms, e-commerce, we were talking about high tech, deep tech. How you design for each of these users is going to be very, very different. And the most common example that I usually take is how we design for a child is going to be very different than we design for a 70-year-old. Also, culture comes into picture, the demographics comes into picture. So you need to consider who you are designing for and keep them in mind, keep their behavioral patterns in mind, keep metrics in mind, keep their adaptability in mind, keep their interaction with the technology in mind, technophobia that we have been talking in mind while we are designing for these platforms too. Three, you need to understand where the gaps are between the stakeholder, especially in low-code, no-code platforms. One of the challenges, like, earlier Sandeep was talking about Shopify. One of the key things is Shopify, a beautiful platform, but they have their own set of restrictions, right? And these restrictions sometimes are, small things, and probably they won't hurt the end users, but sometimes, when these low-code, no-code platforms are catered to B2B platforms, other B2B customers per se, right? Then the chances of these adapting to this low-code, no-code could parallelize them in certain ways. So we need to be very, very clear on the future of the end user market, the market segment. What could they be looking for in the future? And we need to gaps, and we need to understand if the stakeholders' vision is going to adapt to the future requirements. That is something that a lot of low-code, no-code platforms are not able to keep up. We've been working with a few of our a few of our clients. They have, earlier in their initial days, they went with a low-code, no-code platform. Love to continue with them, but these platforms are not able to scale up and provide features that our clients need, and henceforth they are moving towards full stack development, and they're creating their own customized platforms. Increasing the cost, they're believing that this shift could help them increase their adoption rate. So that is one of the key things that we have to keep in mind when we are working on a low-code, no-code platform. How is the future for them going to be? What do they need? What type of features would they need to increase their market share? And what can the stakeholders provide? What's in their vision? So those gaps have to be, be clear in our head, and we need to be able to keep those in mind as the risks while designing it. Hope I answered the question. And if you have any further questions on top of it, we could.
Yes, Pratima, there are 3 more questions. Thank you for answering the first one. The next question is, what are the metrics that can help us determine the business value of a particular low-code, no-code platform?
Sandeep, you want to take it, or do you want me to?
Sure. I can probably touch upon it if you want to add on later on.
Please go ahead, and then I can add on.
I think, if the answer is about, you don't even need to add the low-code, no-code platform to that question, right? You could ask that, and it will still hold good to what metrics determines the business value out of the app that you want to build, irrespective of whether you build out of scratch or whether you build on a low-code, no-code platform, whether you're doing this with one designer versus 10 developers and 5 designers. The metrics will remain the same. That business is not just about app building. Business is about what that app will end up serving consumers, right? But if I still have to link that to a particular platform, I think a big metric that people are adopting low-code, no-code for, and it still remains true, I'm not going to downgrade it, is speed to market, right? So I think it is the number one and it metric, and it will still hold good. But also, I think probably somewhat linked to the earlier question which Pratima was answering about technical debt. Look, you've got to, before choosing a platform you've got to determine what scale are you building this for. Are you building this for 100 users? Are you building this for 100 million users, right? So that determines the choice of your platform. And when I say choice of your platform, need not be choice of which LCNC platform, but just the choice of platform, which means on a 30 GB lying idle machine in your home, or are you hosting this in an AWS? Are you hosting this on a server farm, in China somewhere? So all of these are the factors which will determine. And these factors can then be translated into metrics. Speed to market is one, cost of experimentation to cost of scale ratio is another one. Your people costs, which balance out the form costs, is the other one, which I was giving you example of, whether you have one developer, one designer versus 10 developer, 10 designer. That was are things which actually are almost incognito to the platform that you are going to use. The metrics for the app you are building is more important than the platform you're going to choose.
Absolutely, Sandeep. I think you covered most of it. One add-on to it is, the focus on the business model. Sandeep earlier, in one of the earlier conversations, he mentioned that, on a low-code, no-code platform, I will get to stick to my specialization, and the rest is something that the platform can take care of. So typically, we're building a business, right? There are a lot of things that we have to worry about, and your energy gets distributed across multiple things. With low code, no code, you can focus on, if you're a baker and you specialize in baking, then you can stick to, baking and better at baking or improving your products rather than figuring out how do I go online. What are issues with that, and building an IT team or building a sales team or marketing team, things like that, right? The platform per se can take care of it. A lot of taken care. So based on the history I've seen so far, people who want to stick to their specialization, like photographers who want to teach photography or who want to do online courses on, it doesn't matter what subject. Earlier, they were, putting up a lot of videos on YouTube kind of platforms, but now they are able to build their own platform and using one of these low-code, no-code platforms. And that helps you build your own brand identity, but the rest of the things are taken care by the platform and the service provided by the platform service providers, rather than they worry about them. And they can focus on their own niche market, and they can focus on how they can penetrate into the market, or how they skill themselves, or figure out other things. That's where that is something that I'm adding on to what Sandeep mentioned about speed to market cost. Speed to market costs are extremely important to some of the businesses, at least in the initial days, where they're testing out, if their idea is going to work or not. And in such cases, low-code, no-code platforms have been a boom to a lot of people. They're able to reach out to a lot more people as we speak now. Earlier, they were restricted by not only the physical limitations, but also technical limitations. So I guess, that's what I wanted to add. Shishri, you mentioned.
Yeah, I do have one more question, Pratima.
Sure.
Vishwa is asking, in my view, customization appears to be one of the limitations of low-code, no-code platforms. It may be beneficial for beginners in terms of simplicity, but at what scale do you believe these platforms can expand up to the point of developing tailored requirements?
I didn't hear one of those words. I think can you, just the first sentence, can you speak up? But I understood the question.
Customization appears to be one of the limitations of low-code, no-code.
Yeah. So like I said, if there is a lot of customization involved, low-code, no-code platforms are not for you. Probably in future, at some point, all of these low-code, no-code platforms will open up. Sandeep was talking about an open source platform between the drivers and the end users, right? If it's an open platform, the chances of me being able to add on a few additional features to it is a lot more easier than going to a third-party low-code, no-code. That's one direction I see in terms of customization, open source communities. Along with it, if the low-code, no-code platforms are able to adapt to the speed which the businesses want to take these features out to the market, then I guess, there is scope for these businesses to continue with these platforms. As customization is definitely a challenge. And I guess, people who are looking at low-code, no-code platforms are not looking at a lot of customization. At least that's my take on it and my perception. They want something easy, something simple. They're not looking for too many features. It's just that they want to penetrate into the market as quickly as possible. And, they also want it to be very cost effective. Customization is very expensive, and that is definitely a challenge. I've seen a lot of people first start off with low-code, no-code platforms, and as their business grows, I've also seen them go into building their own homes. The future, it all depends upon how these low-code, no-code platforms will adapt to the speed at which they are expected to in terms of adding features to their platforms. Sandeep, you want to add?
I think fairly accurate. The scale is the function you determine before, kind of starting the journey. What are you building this app? And, app refactoring, is something which every engineering team is kind of used to. Even a customer or an enterprise serving, say, 1 million customers today, if they have to scale to 10 million, short their server, they have to refactor their code, right? So that scaling is essential part of every growing business. So you've got to determine whether you're building this for 100 people, whether you're building this for 1 million people, whether you're 100 million people, right? That will determine whether low code, no code platforms work for you. And to be very honest, low code is a relative term, right? Like no code probably, although nothing is zero code, it is a very qualitative term rather than telling you how much you can or do not need to code. So all of us have heard of WordPress, right? Like there were websites and e-commerce sites. WordPress is, equivalent to Shopify, BigCommerce, etc. So they themselves are a version of low-code platform as well. If you needed to write a blog, earlier you needed to code HTML and, put up a blog of your own, change that around, Blogspot change that around. So yeah, I think the question of scale is something which you determine earlier to picking a platform to build on. And this is the same case with infrastructure too. If you're got to serve, like, if your users on your app are 2 users, right? Then you can host it on your, desktop machine, which might be lying idle, and still get away with it. If your concurrent users are 1,000 people, maybe you can set up a bigger machine in your home. But if your concurrent users are like 100,000, then you need a server, right? So that's the scale you determine and pick the platforms for, rather than saying,
Okay, I guess Sandeep is stuck.
to build, and I'm hoping it will get built in the next few years.
What you're saying, Sandeep, one of the platforms that we worked on earlier was Thinkific, in a different context. The reason I was bringing up this platform is there are platforms out there which also will help. They are not only platform providers, but also service providers in terms of hosting your applications and stuff. They also will, increase, the number of people that you want to host. And, there are certain, I'm not saying all of them, there are platforms which do that. Excuse me. Yeah. But at the same time, right, customization on them is been extremely hard. If you need a feature. If the feature requirements is the same, but the irrespective of the target audience, then I think some of these, I wouldn't say all of them, some of these are able to help you scale up your business. But along with increase in your target audience or market, if there are a lot more features that are getting added to attract these people, then that is becoming one of the challenges with low-code platforms.
Agree. Customizations are never easy, not even while choosing the butter masala or chicken butter masala in a restaurant menu. It's not easy to get that right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sandeep. Shishri, any further questions?
No, Pratima, that's all.
Great.
So any closing notes?
Sorry,
Pratima, you were saying something?
No, I was just, go ahead.
So any closing notes, Sandeep?
I enjoyed it. Thank you, Pratima. So, again, we're in a flux. We're in the motion right now of low code, no code. So I hope we don't have to bite our tongue when things turn out the other way. In a few years' time, nobody predicted we would be here when we were using the black screen that we were referring to in our opening remarks. It's. We're not future predictors here between me and Pratima. We are not soothsayers in any way. All of us are in this journey. We are hoping all for what will come out best for each of our personal and professional lives, right? So I'm more positive. I'm absolutely gung-ho about what this could mean. What could acceleration mean to go to markets? I think I thwarted the fear of losing jobs and downskilling of people, etc. I think that's a risk of yesterday and not today. So my tone to this moment is very, very positive. I'd highly encourage each one of the people to go out and try something, whether it is for your bread and butter job, whether it is for your evening snack after your day job, for your hobby. Go out and build. This is the best time to build and put it out there. You never know whether 100 people are going to use it or 1 million people are going to use it, like the pickle and popper people that we see coming up on Shark Tank India very regularly.
Yep. So folks, I have seen only a little bit of what Sandeep does. Sandeep is also into agriculture. He has a lot of passions apart from just talking about low code or no code or working for CData. Sandeep, it would be really nice to get to know a lot about you later some point. Probably we could once do a session on agriculture like you were mentioning, maybe another day for it. But what I realized is, in these webinars, we don't get to know a lot from panelists like you, and you guys are a great inspiration because the focus is not just on one. That is something that I would have loved to open up that in the opening notes, but I just wanted to say that, hey, it's Sandeep. You're only seeing a little version of Sandeep in this webinar. There's a lot Sandeep does, and probably we could, keep it for a next webinar sometime.
That's a full day workshop, Pratima, not a 60-minute webinar.
I agree.
And that has to happen on my farm with the offer of free labor from all the when there's a harvest time next time on my farm, I'll call you guys and you could come in for a good hearty meal and free labor for me, along with the yarn that I went
anything for food, Sandeep.
I know I had to.
It was really nice talking to you, Sandeep. It was really nice knowing you as well.
Thank you, Pratima. Cheers to everyone. Thank you for joining in and have a great evening.
Thank you too. Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks everyone for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good evening, everyone.